Well, hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk, does gear matter? You'll have to excuse me, I'm a little bit tired. Yes, I know, again. But I was out at 5 o'clock this morning trying to get a decent sunrise and yeah, just didn't happen. I spent 4 hours at Halton Castle trying to do a vlog, trying to do some images, but the morning was just grey. And it's still grey out there now. It's absolutely miserable. But anyway, we're here to discuss, does gear matter? And again, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's contributed to the comments on these topics. The first one being sky replacement and today's. Without your comments, these videos would just be a little bit flat and it would just be my opinion. And I will say this on every video on each of these topics. That's exactly what these are. They're just my point of view and what you guys have actually had to say in the comments. There's no right or wrong to any of these. So if you want to contribute to the next video, it's DSLRs and mirrorless versus the phone. What's your thoughts on phone photography? We'll cover that on the next topic. So let's get cracking onto this one. I'll go through my points and my thoughts first, and then we'll have a look at what you guys have to say. The last video I did, I felt went on a little bit too long. So I'll just take bullet points from your comments. Just try and keep the flow a little bit smoother. And truthfully, that last one was a pig to edit. So to start, does gear matter? Let me take you on a little bit of history, or at least my history. I started photography about 7 years ago, but I think truthfully, I need to rewind the years even further back to a 16-year-old version of me that was fresh out of school. There aren't a lot of you that know this, but I used to be a television cameraman. I used to work freelance for the BBC, ITV, Sky News, Sky Sports, and anybody else who would have me. I used to work for a company that's based in the Northwest, but I used to travel around a lot, and it was all to do with news. I was what they call an ENG, an electrical news gatherer. And this job at the age of 16 got me travelling over the whole of UK and most of Europe. And the beauty of this job, it was so varied. One day I'd be shooting at the local hospice that's just opened and Princess Anne would be there. The next, I'd be in somewhere like Russia for a couple of weeks. But one thing that job taught me, as a cameraman, gear matters. Now obviously we were talking about broadcast equipment. Back in 1991, the camera I was using was about £30,000 of gear. The lens on the front around 20, the tripods up to 10. Something to do with the way the heads were moving. They were fluid head tripods. I remember the choices were Vincent and Satchler. I believe they're still going today. The camera I was using was a Sony Betacam SP, and they're always fitted with Canon lenses, and they weighed an absolute ton. I was watching something on television the other day and it showed this Betacam SP camera, and I still remember what each of the buttons do and how it felt, and just the weight of on your shoulder. That satisfying feeling as the camera clips into the tripod holding. Strange, I know, but it sort of stuck with me. But basically, that gear mattered. It was strong and robust. It always worked and the quality was phenomenal. And trust me when I say, these things would take a battering. They'd work in freezing cold temperatures, also the heats of the desert. These things had to work, so they cost a lot of money. And all this is not even taking into account that they had to be broadcast quality. Now, with the early 90s, we never had 4K, we didn't even know what it was. The talk was always broadcast. Comparing the difference of the quality of the early 90s to today, where we can get this sort of quality from a mobile phone, we would never have dreamt this. It just shows how far we've moved on. Sorry, little sidetrack there, but I think it's quite important to understand that my mentality of gear is, yes, gear does matter. But like everything, there's a counter argument to this. So on to photography, which is what this is really based on. So late 2015, I decided to go out and buy myself a DSLR camera. My work pattern had changed, I had quite a bit of spare time, and I wanted to take up a new hobby that would fill that. Video had always kind of stuck with me, so I thought I'd move on to photography. So 2015, I went out and purchased my first DSLR, which was a Nikon D7200. With its kit lens, I think it was an 18-55, and I thought this was amazing. I still look back on images on that D3200 with pride. Probably because they were my first images and I had that real creative buzz. I just wanted to go out and take photographs of absolutely everything. Didn't matter what it was, it could have been a can of empty Coke on the floor. I just wanted to take images, I wanted to be creative. So I used to go out with my D3200, not really understanding photography, but just with that keen interest. And that interest soon developed into landscape, and that's kind of the rut I've been stuck in. I think rut is probably an unfair word, but that's let's call it the avenue I've kind of stuck to. I will from time to time vary off. I have done a few weddings, I've done some portraiture, and I have done some motorsports as well. But my love, my passion is landscape photography, trying to get the best out of a landscape. I was feeling quite limited with the kit lens I had, the 18-55, and my first purchase, I think, was a 55-300, or it could have been a 70-300. Either way, I needed a zoom lens. Not really sure why, I just wanted to experiment with it. These are all DX lenses, which are great for the crop sensor of the Nikon D7200. And as my interest developed, I started getting landscape photography magazines. And at the time, the Nikon D7200 was out. And this was getting top marks across the board. And all of a sudden, my Nikon D3200, which I've loved and cherished, didn't seem as good at this point. Now, there was a genuine reason for upgrading as well. It wasn't just coming from a heart. I wanted something with the LCD screen on the top, something that had the light measuring on the top of the camera. Certainly when you're learning about exposure, the f-stop, the ISO, the shutter speed, there was a lot going on in my mind and I wanted to learn it all. But this just helped. And it did, and I still use it today. But like all my gear, I wasn't paying the full brand new price. I wanted to wait for this to come down. So I waited another 12 months and waited for them to come onto the used scene. And with that, I ended up purchasing my third lens, an 18-200, I think it was, f4.5. Again, another DX lens for a crop sensor. The whole feel of the camera was a little bit better. I also bought the battery attachment as well, so I could sort of turn it around and sort of do landscape portrait dead easy. Yeah, the whole feel of it was just that much better. I noticed instantly as well that when I ran the images from the D7200 through Lightroom and Photoshop, the quality was so much better. The shadows didn't have any grain and the highlights could have been brought down a lot easier. I could sort of save a lot more images. The D3200 did struggle in low light conditions. So fast forward to 2019, my landscape photography had really started to develop. I knew what I wanted to take. I knew this was the avenue I was going to walk down. But for landscape photography, I'd started to understand that a larger sensor would have been better. Yes, I know, it's just an excuse to move on to the next camera, and it was. So again, I started looking. The D7200, well, I could have got a better camera. This camera that was so good, maybe there's better out there. The Nikon D850 had just been launched and I thought, yeah, I really want that camera. But with the budget I had at the time, it just wasn't viable. So I went for its older brother. I started having a look at used Nikon D810s because I knew my collection of DX lenses would be useless on a larger sensor. So not only would I have to buy the new camera, I'd also have to buy some new lenses as well. So that was it. I'd settled on the Nikon D810. I wanted the larger sensor and I just wanted more of a pro body. Yes, I know, I was selling it to myself, but yeah, it was my purchase. I absolutely loved that camera. Until a fateful day where I went out on a normal shoot, the camera went over, it fell into a bit of a ravine, into a puddle, muddy puddle, cracked the housing, and water got inside and damaged it. If that wouldn't have happened, I would still be quite happy using the Nikon D810 to this day. But I blew the dust off the Nikon D7200, put on the holy trinity of lenses, and went out and started shooting again with that camera. Now the D7200 with the much better glass on the front were getting much better images than I remember. So I kept it for about 6 or 7 months. Whilst I was reclaiming my love for my Nikon D7200, the insurance company paid out and part of the policy was old for new. So I basically got the money that could pay for a Nikon D850. Over the past 7 to 8 years, I have pushed myself as hard as I can to understand composition, what makes an image, and how to bring all of this together. Yes, I still make mistakes. Yes, there's still images and I think, what the hell did I take that for? But generally, I get it. I understand what I need to take at a location. I'm constantly looking at compositions, even when I don't have a camera there. Constantly looking at light, understanding a location, and just thinking, yeah, that would make a shot, that wouldn't make a shot. And then more importantly, how to translate it onto the camera. What sort of lens? What sort of focal length? What f-stop? What ISO? These are all things that we develop as photographers in our skill set. And over this time, I've gone out to shoot at least 2 to 3 times a week to master my skill. And yes, there are still times I come home and think, why the hell did I take that? That looks awful. But I've taken that risk and I've actually got the balls to sit here and say, yes, not all of my images turn out. So in conclusion, and to wrap my waffle up, yes, gear does matter. It all depends what you're going out and shooting. What I want from the cameras that I use is the best quality. So people can argue all they like, oh, and they will, about gear not mattering. But I personally think it does, because I want the best for my images. It's as simple as that. To keep this video a little bit shorter, I'll paraphrase and just sort of use bullet points. That's okay. So Andrew Baxter says, I believe the gear matters, but not in the terms of cost, which seems to be the premise of a certain YouTubers who play the I have a gazillion megapixels, but you peasants don't need it sort of condescending way. I hope you don't mean me on that. Andrew then goes on about how he doesn't need a big DSLR with loads of lenses. He does a lot of mountain climbing, so weight, yeah, is very important for him. He also mentions a quite a good point as well about you need to then start upgrading your PC. The more megapixels you have, the more processing power, etc. So yeah, some very good points there, Andrew. Thank you for your comment. Craig Yates says, hi Ben, does gear matter? No. What matters is the desire, passion and vision to capture a moment in time that resonates to yourself first and then a viewing audience. That is a really interesting point, Craig, and I'm going to sort of cover that topic on the next vlog, the DSLRs or mirrorless versus the phone. But some great points there, Craig. Adam Hurst says, thank you Ben, and certainly thank you for reading out my last comments in the last video. It was really nice to hear. As regards to does gear matter? Yes, it certainly does matter, and that's all down to the individual. Different gear gets different results. I, for one, love the old format of film and find it very different to digital. Film certainly slows me down, and I have to make sure I get it right in camera. It's much more difficult than shooting it onto an SD card and then processing the images through Lightroom. But what does it matter? If somebody wants to purchase the top-end camera, then let them do it. If somebody wants to keep with basic gear, then let them do it. It's all personal choice at the end of the day. I really don't understand why there is a debate on this. Do people no longer have freedom of choice? For me, I buy what I can afford. Thanks, Adam. Badger comments the fact he's a house husband and doesn't actually have a wage. He uses a Nikon D3000, lists the number of lenses that he actually has as well, but he's just grateful that he can still go out and use his camera. And I think this is the beauty of photography. It doesn't really matter what your budget is. It's just about getting out there and actually using the camera and how it makes you feel. So yes, I can really relate to Badger's comments. It's all about the excitement of going out. Craig Piper says, I think that when people say the gear doesn't matter, that they are simply stating fact that a good photographer can get good images with low-end gear and a lousy photographer gets lousy images with high-end gear. Anything more than that and they would have to admit that gear does indeed matter. Craig then mentions the fact he's moved on to wildlife photography and the buffer in his old camera just wouldn't keep up with the demand. Craig then closes with, proof that gear matters is simply the number of photographers that rush out and buy the latest camera as soon as it's announced. It's the way it's been for a very long time. Thank you very much, Craig, some great points there. Bill mentions, gear matters on many levels, but on YouTube it's an important piece of clickbait pie. I found your channel some time ago when you got your D850 and was curious to hear what you had to say. I liked your nighttime beach images and have been a subscriber ever since. Thank you, Bill. Bill also mentions that he uses a Nikon D850 and he used to use a Nikon D7200, but he began shooting on film back in the late 60s and he wishes he still had that camera. Bill then closes on his thoughts of mirrorless cameras and his words, I'm too much of an old dog for new tricks. Thank you very much, Bill. Hugh Wolf comments with a lot of history on the old cameras that he used to use and how he went across to Sony digital cameras and how he sold it because it just didn't live up to the hype. He also mentions how he used to shoot film with his dad and how he gave it up for a number of years and returned to photography when he purchased a D700. He also mentions a comparison between Canon and Nikon, and the reason why he went to Nikon is because the feel of the buttons, and I completely get that. He also mentions how he does quick snaps on his iPhone, the iPhone 8, and always gets sunsets and sunrises on that. He also mentions about the best camera is the one you have with you. Completely agree. I've always liked the better quality products. Not to say I'm a snub about it, they're just easier to use. I've avoided the mirrorless craze as I'm happy with the older, already paid for equipment that still works perfectly and delivers what I seek. In the end, it still comes down to the human element. The person that can see the image is better prepared, equipped than one with the latest, biggest, most costly equipment. Completely agree. So again, thank you very much for your comments. It's been great to hear your point of view. And yes, I understand that each of these topics are great for debate. And that's really what I want from you guys. So understand your logic, your thinking, and whether it's just myself that feels the same way. So to sum up, yes, a lot of people believe that gear does matter, and a lot of people believe that it's all to do with the photographer's mindset and the photographer's eye. Both elements are true. I've taken some amazing, if I say so myself, images with an iPhone, and it's so true, certainly what Hugh says, the best camera is the one that you have with you. In fact, ta-da! I absolutely love this book by Chase Jarvis, and there's some amazing images. Really, really inspirational book. If you've not got it, I certainly recommend it. So as I said at the start, yes, I do believe gear matters. I'd be lying to myself if I didn't think it did, but that's only because I want to get the best out of each of the images. After all, an image that's perfect looks so much better when it's shot with a really good camera. And of course, not just the camera. We're overlooking lenses, and we're also overlooking tripods. I'm a strong believer that a good quality, sturdy tripod is worth its weight in gold. And the list can go on. We can talk about filters, we can talk about bags, we can talk about computers, we can talk about absolutely everything that's involved in photography to make sure that image is perfect. It all depends on you and what you want from that image. So this brings us on to our third topic, similar to today's, but DSLR mirrorless versus the phone. Have we now got to a point where we can throw all of our camera gear away and just take our mobile phones out? Are you a sole mobile phone shooter? Have you never owned a DSLR? It would be great to hear. I appreciate some people commented on the sky replacement video about sky replacement. Obviously that boat sailed, but if you want to get involved, let me know your thoughts on the DSLR stroke mirrorless versus the phone. It'd be great to hear. So I said I wanted to keep this video more snappy. I don't think I've done that, probably way run over time. So without further ado, it's time for me to say goodbye. Hopefully I'll try and go out and do another landscape video. So take care, all the best. Next video out very, very soon. Bye-bye now. Boo!